I believe that President Putin and his counterpart Zelensky should sit down together to discuss. We need to stop the meaningless deaths of millions of people, especially young soldiers. I believe we can reach an agreement, and that is why I hope for a ceasefire. I also hope for a real solution to end this conflict. This is the view expressed by U.S. President Donald Trump on February 21st. In this statement, he emphasized that he fully supports resolving the crisis in Ukraine for humanitarian reasons, along with many other important reasons. On the day before, in an interview with FK News, Mr. Trump said that despite strong criticism from President Zelensky, he was still willing to continue dialogue if Mr. Zelensky took the initiative to contact him. However, he accused Zelensky of obstructing the process of ending the war. Mr. Trump believed that for the past 3 years, the Ukrainian president had done nothing significant to resolve the conflict. Honestly, I don't think he really needs to be involved in negotiations. On the contrary, he just makes the search for an agreement more difficult. Look at the state of his country, where everything has been destroyed, Mr. Trump remarked. After returning to the White House, Mr. Trump continued to push diplomatic efforts to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Recently, on February 18th, a high-level meeting took place between the US and Russia in Arabia, but no representatives from Ukraine or the European Union were involved. However, the biggest issue now is the disagreement between the parties on the conditions for negotiation. President Trump stated that the U.S. and Russian delegations will hold a second high-level meeting on February 25th in Arabia. He hopes this will be an important step in ending the war that has claimed many lives. While expressing a desire for the U.S. to play an active role in seeking a peaceful solution to the crisis, President Trump also denied reports that he would go to Russia on May 9th to attend the Victory Day celebration. Additionally, he believes that the U.S. will soon reach an agreement requiring Ukraine to repay between $400 to $500 billion for aid provided over the past 3 years. However, he did not disclose how Ukraine would repay this amount. Some sources suggest that the agreement may include provisions allowing the U.S. to access Ukraine's mineral resources. Some recent information from U.S. officials also indicated that the White House has changed its attitude towards Ukraine because President Zelensky refused to sign a $500 billion agreement with the U.S. regarding rare minerals. Furthermore, the White House was dissatisfied with Ukraine's reception of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent during his latest visit to Kiev. In particular, some reports even mentioned that President Zelensky did not greet the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury due to being too busy sleeping, which displeased the White House and was seen as disrespectful. At the Munich Security Conference held in Germany, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky surprised both U.S. Vice President Jay Van and Secretary of State Marco Rubio with his strong statements. Specifically, Zelensky stated that he could not accept the mineral agreement proposed by the U.S. and publicly rejected the proposal. Not stopping there, the Ukrainian president also strongly criticized U.S. President Donald Trump, accusing him of living in a bubble of fake news created by Russia's misinformation. Zelensky asserted that any agreement between Russia and the U.S., particularly the dialogue held between the two sides in Saudi Arabia on February 18th, would not be accepted by Ukraine if the negotiations were not inclusive of the country. The reason he gave was that these talks were held without any Ukrainian representatives, which he considered completely unfair and unacceptable. Zelensky's statements left U.S. officials, especially Vice President Jay Van and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, both shocked and angered. Both believe that Zelensky should not have publicly criticized the U.S. president, as this action not only harmed the relationship between the two countries, but also was not in Ukraine's best interests. Secretary of State Rubio even argued that criticizing Trump would only lead Ukraine deeper into a difficult situation. The U.S. reaction further heightened tensions, as the relationship between President Trump and Zelensky had already cooled. President Donald Trump himself did not hesitate to respond to Zelensky's criticisms. Trump strongly accused the Ukrainian president of being the one who prolonged the conflict in Ukraine for over 3 years. Trump harshly criticized Zelensky, calling him a dictator with low domestic approval ratings. Furthermore, Trump demanded that the Ukrainian government quickly organize a presidential election to put the country back on the right track and address internal issues. This was also a move to pressure Zelensky, as the US viewed him as part of the cause of the prolonged instability in Ukraine. On February 19th, Russian President Vladimir Putin also spoke out about the escalating tensions between Ukraine and the US. Putin stated that Kiev's concern about not being invited to the negotiations between Russia and the US was unreasonable. He emphasized that Russia and the US had many bilateral issues to discuss separately, and Ukraine's involvement in these talks was not necessarily required. This further made Ukraine feel abandoned and excluded from important decisions regarding the country's future. Meanwhile, the US government continues to seek diplomatic solutions to end the war in Ukraine. The US Secretary of State has called on UN members to adopt a resolution aimed at promoting the peace process and ending the conflict. The US draft resolution is relatively brief, but demonstrates a strong determination from Washington. The document consists of only 3 paragraphs and 65 words, but carries a powerful message, affirming that the UN's goal is to maintain global peace and security, while urging all member states to support ending the fighting in Ukraine. This resolution does not criticize Russia, but also expresses condolences for the lives lost during the prolonged conflict. However, the draft resolution does not address the territorial integrity of Ukraine, a point that many countries and stakeholders see as crucial in the negotiation process. The Russian ambassador to the UN has expressed support for the US move, but he emphasized that this resolution does not address the root causes of the conflict, but rather is a temporary measure. This US move also comes at a time when the relationship between President Donald Trump and President Zelensky has become more strained than ever. The US has decided to engage in direct negotiations with Russia over the Ukraine conflict without the participation of Ukraine or its European allies. Both US and Russian delegations met in Saudi Arabia on February 18th to discuss bilateral issues and prepare for negotiations aimed at finding a solution to the conflict. This is seen as an important step in improving relations between the two major countries, but it has also increased Ukraine's concerns and dissatisfaction. The UN is closely monitoring the situation and preparing for a vote on the US resolution. Meanwhile, European countries are stepping up military aid efforts for Ukraine, with an emergency aid package worth up to 20 billion euros. This aid package aims to provide air defense systems, artillery shells, long-range missiles, and drones to help Ukraine strengthen its defense forces and enhance its ability to withstand pressure from the Russian military. Countries like the UK, France, and Germany have participated in providing weapons, with each country taking responsibility for delivering important military equipment to Ukraine. However, despite strong support from European countries, Ukraine still faces the reality that the conflict shows no sign of ending. Decisions from the US and European countries will determine Ukraine's future, but achieving a genuine peace agreement remains extremely difficult. The US government is currently employing strong diplomatic measures, but the situation remains very complex, and an immediate solution is not yet in sight. In this context, Ukraine appears to be in a difficult position, as important decisions about the country's future are being made without its full participation. European countries, while continuing to provide aid, cannot guarantee that military assistance will help Ukraine win this conflict. The Ukrainian government needs to make wise and quick decisions to avoid being sidelined in crucial negotiations and to find a sustainable solution for the country. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the details shared just now have concluded our video for today's story. We sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch and pay attention. After the current tense developments, the question arises, when will the conflict between Russia and Ukraine come to an end? Will there be a peaceful solution soon? We would greatly appreciate receiving your predictions and insights on the future of this conflict. Particularly at this time, the US is employing very strong diplomatic measures and has conducted many negotiations, meetings, and direct contacts with Russia. This shows that the US is making every effort to promote peace. However, this does not mean that Ukraine has escaped its current difficult situation. So what do you think? Can Ukraine find a way out of the current situation? We look forward to hearing your thoughts and predictions in the comments below this video. Thank you for joining us. As we have mentioned, while we hope for the conflict to end soon, Achieving peace immediately is still very challenging given the current context. Goodbye, and see you in the next videos. Of course, we also hope that the upcoming news about Russia and Ukraine will be positive, but to completely end this conflict, we may still need more time and stronger efforts from all parties. Thank you, everyone.